Hello, and you're welcome back to this week's Unfiltered Autistic Podcast. And I can't quite believe it, but I'm actually joined this week by Kelly Mahler. Depending on where you are in the world, you may have heard the way I've just pronounced the name either correctly or incorrectly. From Ireland, Mahler might be very familiar, but as I was chatting to Kelly at the top of the call, maybe I'm pronouncing it in a very unique way. So maybe it's just a Mayo thing where I'm based here in Ireland. So Kelly, you're very welcome to the podcast. For any of our listeners that are discovering maybe yourself, which I highly doubt, but maybe they are discovering yourself for the first time, do you want to talk a little bit about who you are? I suppose your incredible work in the area of interoception, and I suppose how we're chatting today on the podcast about interoception, your brand new book, which I know you've number 2 coming out. The first one I have here, book 1, Noticing My Body Signals with Dr. Curious. And also, I was just saying to you at the top of the call, I've always been a mega fan of your work, but I would have bought your original, I suppose the first iteration of this book many years ago, Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System. So I'm a mega fan of your work, and I know many of our listeners will be as well, not only because it's changed the course of, I would say, sensory understanding for many people across the world, including, I suppose, here in Ireland, but also it's, for me, brought more clarity to my own life as an autistic person, but also as a parent to 4 autistic children. So a huge thanks to yourself for being on the podcast here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, we were talking about the pronunciation of my last name, Mahler, and I feel like you are saying it correctly. It was just with a way better accent than mine. So yes, hi everyone listening. I am so thrilled to be here. I am an occupational therapist from the United States. I've been practicing for 24 years, which is really hard to believe. Most of my work has been in the schools. So I've predominantly worked with kids, obviously, but I also have a mini private business on the side where I work with some autistic adults, which has just rounded out my practice in like such an unexpectedly amazing way. So I fell into this topic of interoception, which is what we're here to talk about. Kind of like by accident, honestly. I've always been like so passionate. And if people know me, and I mean, even just probably watching, if you watch my social media, I am a very passionate person. I have always been like really interested in supporting like sensory processing and mental health and emotion regulation. Like those were always like kind of my interest areas as an occupational therapy practitioner. And like I didn't know about interoception for the first decade of my career, and I was constantly working on these areas with with the students I was supporting, and they would make gains, but I always felt like there's something just like not like, I don't know what the word is. Like it's just not like hitting. Like there's something missing that something I'm missing. So I read this paper. And it was by this brilliant neuroscientist named Dr. Bud Craig, who has recently passed, but a brilliant man. And he wrote about this new sense called interoception. And I'm like, a new sense? Like, I love sensory. How do I not know about this thing called interoception? And Dr. Craig talked about in this paper how it's the sense of our physiological condition of our body. And I was like, what? Like, that's a big, like, kind of mouthful, physiological condition of your body. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what my students are struggling with, the physiological condition of their body. Like, what does that mean, right? And essentially, like, you know, in practical terms, it's like understanding how our body feels. Interoception helps us to know how our body feels. And I think even more importantly, what our body needs to thrive in this world, what our body needs to feel as comfortable and regulated as possible. And so, you know, obviously I've completely hooked into this topic now because it is so important to every single one of our lives. You know, it has taken me on a journey as an occupational therapist and really being able to understand my clients better. But also, you know, I'm just going to say it's really impacted my own life personally. You know, as you said, like I've been on my own personal interoception journey. It has helped me understand my children, my own children. I have 2 teenagers. And I still struggle every day as a mom to them, just saying. But yeah, interoception has been such a wild, unexpected ride of learning about this sense.
But gosh, you know what I was thinking as you were chatting away? I'm actually so glad that you came across that paper, because look at all of the lives. You probably didn't realize it that day when you read that paper for the first time, the journey that you were going to be on, but also there's like people in Ireland like myself or all over the world that have just been so their lives have been enhanced by a better understanding of themselves. But also, I'm a parent, as I referenced earlier, for autistic children too have intellectual disabilities. Like it is really not only supporting me professionally in the work that I do, but it's supporting myself personally. But even in helping my children, figure out themselves, and for myself to know that there could be other things going on that I may not be picking up on, but they may also not be able to pick up on. So it's a little bit like in your incredible children's book, Dr. Curious. It made me curious, and it made me think about, hold on, instead of jumping to the conclusion of, oh, it must be this, actually there's other things going on here in terms of, I suppose, under the surface, and specifically, I'm not even going to attempt to say the physiological condition, which I'm not even going to attempt to say the rest of that. But yeah, I just wanted to just acknowledge the positive impact of your work. And I know when I popped up the question box on social to let everybody know that you were, available to come on the podcast to talk about your incredible work, the podcast question box was just, it was so, first of all, with lots of incredible OTs from all over Ireland and abroad saying that they couldn't wait to hear from you, but also all of the questions that came in. And one specific questionnaire that did come in, and this is something that I suppose I myself had, I suppose, the personal experience of undertaking. You have an incredible online learning platform. And one of the courses that I undertook belonging to yourself many years ago was toilet learning, or I suppose interoception and toileting. And I just was having a quick browse on your website earlier, fabulous new apparel there and everything, and loads of other downloadables and an online store and learning and even more learning videos available. But I suppose you now have Toileting 2.0 now available. And again, for any listeners, whether professional or parents, highly, highly, highly recommend. But I suppose for anyone listening, if you're supporting an autistic child or say a person with an intellectual disability, and maybe toileting has been maybe a little bit tricky for them, and maybe they haven't ever considered interoception before, what role would interoception differences play with or play into, or maybe negate or stop toileting to, I suppose, be successful for a young person or indeed an older person as well?
Yeah, I mean, toileting is so entwined with interoception for every single human being. To notice when we need to pee, I don't know what terms you use in Ireland, but when you need to pee or when you need to poo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that for most people involves some kind of interoception feel that kind of alerts us like, oh, like, my bladder's full, or oh, like my colon's full, or oh, like I have a gurgle in my stomach. I might feel an emergency kind of brewing kind of thing. So lots of inner feels related to toileting. So we need to have an interoception lens, I think, when we are thinking. It's not the only factor involved. And when we did our Toileting 2.0 course, we have learned a lot about interoception. This has been something also very unexpected about my career. I never knew how much I would learn about toilet learning. I never knew how many stories I would hear from people all around the world about their toileting adventures. And so, one of the biggest things we stressed in our newer course was the importance of feeling safe and regulated in your body so that we can have our signals online. Because if our body is under stress, if our body, does not feel safe, then usually it's a protective mechanism or a protective process where we kind of like disconnect from our body because our body doesn't feel good. It feels unsafe. It's under threat. It's in a state of possibly trauma, right? And so we're designed to disconnect from that internal experience to protect ourselves. And so, first and foremost, toileting has to start not on the toilet. It has to start with regulation and helping our kids to feel, and adults to feel as safe as possible in their bodies. And then the next step is to help them feel as safe and comfortable in one bathroom setting, a restroom. I don't know what you call it in Ireland, a room with a toilet, okay? And that's not even sitting on the toilet. That's how do we play in the bathroom, or how do we find like aromatherapy that makes the bathroom smell in a regulating way, or how do we, reduce the noise of the flush, or, whatever it is, how do we make that environment feel safe to the body? Then we slowly over time work to actually eliminating on the toilet. And so I think that's very different for a lot of different toilet learning approach than a lot of other toilet learning approaches, because a lot of them start sitting on the toilet, we're rewarding, and it completely misses the whole internal experience of how do we help someone feel safe in their body and then feel safe in a room with a toilet, and then maybe work towards being able to eliminate on the toilet. And that is a very simplified version of all that we talk about in the course. But I think that's the biggest thing I wanted to share with you and your listeners is like that feeling safe and regulating their body is the first place we need to start.
That's so interesting what you've said, Kelly. I suppose in relation to that felt safety, you're probably speaking directly in relation to the nervous system safety there as well. Do you think would that be highly relevant for interoception
Yeah.
as well? So I suppose for anyone listening then in terms of toileting, say they've been on the journey with toileting for a while and maybe and this is a question that did actually come in, say they've been doing very well with say with the wheeze and maybe and now what I'm going to frame this is that the young person or sorry in Ireland we might say wee or a pee, so would say in terms of poops then or a poo, the person has done very well with making it to the toilet, being able to pass the wee, and they're not constipation, there's no other medical reason, but the piece around the getting to the toilet on time for a poop, would you find that comes up in your work in terms of interoception as well or no?
All the time. All the time. Yes, very common. And, a couple things, like I love the fact that you already said they're not constipated because that's always my first question. And then I also try to think about have they had a past experience? It could even be one time with a painful poop because the body remembers. And it doesn't mean that the body's going to remember that painful poop forever, but our bodies are just designed that way. And so it does kind of breed a little bit more patience because we need to slowly work over time to help each person's body remember that pooping doesn't have to hurt. So if you feel like you have had the constipation, it's now like well managed, poop is flowing in whatever way elimination currently feels safe to a person, whether that's do you call them diapers, nappies, whatever it is?
In Ireland, we call it, I think, a nappy or a pull up, depending on the age of the person.
Okay, nappy or pull up, so we know that there's no pain left there. Then we can, again, slowly work towards showing that elimination doesn't have to hurt on the toilet. And that's going to look different for each person. But think about how do we create, again, like I'm just going to keep saying, how do we create a safe environment for that? Maybe they can sit in their pull up on the toilet and they're playing with maybe a favorite toy or a favorite thing on their iPad because sometimes, and I know this is controversial, but sometimes we need to take someone out of their body for momentarily because they might be so hyper focused on their body because they're worried that it's going to hurt again, right? And so we just need to create scenarios and maybe it's like a nice warm compress on their belly while they're sitting on the toilet. Like there's just so many like ideas, and occupational therapists are not short of ideas of how to bring comfort to a person's body. It's going to be so different for each person, but how do we gradually and slowly work our way to being able to eliminate poo on the toilet? And I think that one thing that we forget, which is what I started with, is that there could be one past experience that's still living in the body. It doesn't mean it's always going to be there, but it just kind of it requires patience and work on our part as the supporters of how do we help this person feel more confident in their body and know that this doesn't have to hurt.
Absolutely. And I suppose that leads, I suppose, myself into talking about your brand new book. Now, I know this is book one and I think I only saw it on social the other week, you've book two out now. So for anyone listening, and I think what's really unique about your particular book is I haven't seen any book on this topic for children at all from my perspective. And if anyone's watching the video format of this podcast, and there's more books to the left of me as well on another bookshelf, but I haven't ever seen a book like this, and I certainly haven't seen any book or any explainer of interoception in the way that you've done it. I think it's very, very depending on the person's profile. Say if it's a person with a PDA profile, like it's done so well that it's like what you're talking about in terms of felt safety. You've put that into the book. There's nobody telling you what to do. You're just being curious. Dr. Curious is bringing you on the journey. I also love the name of the character, Vic. It's all just so neutral and inclusive for every. See, I was like annotating it. But I suppose, do you want to talk a little bit about where the book idea came from, and I suppose what has been the feedback from the community that have been, very lucky to be able to now have such an accessible book. I suppose it's a series now, a book series available to them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for seeing the book. Like honestly, like you kind of get what we did on purpose. We really wanted each reader to feel safe because your listeners are probably like, stop saying that, but I can't tell you how important it is for people to feel safe in their bodies so that then they want to notice how their body feels. And yes, so the book you're referring to is called Noticing My Body Signals. It's a kid's book. And the reason this book is so special to me is because I wrote it with my youngest daughter, with Madeline. And so she was 15 at the time we wrote book number one. And book number one is all about noticing your body signals. So the whole premise is the characters are, it's a class and they all go to this science lab and it's Dr. Curious's science lab. And they're there to learn about these things called body signals. And we talk a little bit about what is a body signal. And then they go into hands-on learning. So this was designed to be a very interactive book for those that feel like they want to interact. So they do lots of experiments, like let's shake our hands fast and notice how our hands feel. And the readers are invited along on that journey with the class of noticing how their hands feel. But there's very purposeful intentional things weaved throughout the book. There's characters that don't want to do the experiment. There's characters that don't feel comfortable sharing how their hands feel. And Dr. Curious the whole way along is saying, she reassures everyone that you don't need to do this experiment if your body doesn't feel comfortable. Like, so saying no to something is us listening to our bodies. So, right. And so we need to like really honor someone's right to say no, unless there's a safety issue, but we need to honor that right to say no and listen to their bodies. And then we also like really try to represent a whole diverse way of feeling. So there's kids in the book that are sharing, through mouth words, but there's, one of our characters uses an iPad to communicate. A few other kids like will talk about their body signals through colors and shapes and weather systems. Yeah, so Amanda's holding up a little picture there. So there's so many intentional things that we weave throughout that are core to the interoception work. And the community response has been so exciting. And we've heard from a lot of parents and a lot of like professionals that are using this with children. And it's really cute. Like there's a whole bunch of extra characters in the book, and we have kids like naming them and sending us the names that they want for the characters. And but we've also heard from a lot of adults, which I think is so cool. And they're sharing, I am learning so much about my own body by reading this book with my client or reading this book with my child. So it really has been like, I mean, Maddie and I have been just so overwhelmingly like touched and like just, it just has been, we didn't think that it was going to be this resonate that much with the community. So it's been really fun. So yeah, you said that book number 2 just came out, and that's all about connecting our body signals to the meaning. So now hopefully a lot of people are noticing these body signals. Now it's time to figure out, what do they mean for me? And it's kind of the same theme where we weave a lot of like little hidden nuggets in there that are so core to interoception work.
And actually, a lot of even what you've just said, but also that what I took from the book is that this is not about compliance. You can say no. And I know you're doing a piece on social at the moment around non-compliance.
Yes. So we declared this is, I know we're probably filming this before the podcast comes out, but right now in the filming, we are in July, the month of July, and we deemed the month of July International Less Compliance Month. And what we mean by that is, just really, there's so many people advocating. You're advocating on this podcast. Like there's just so many people out there that we're all coming together and advocating for this thing that, we might all call it different things, but it's less compliance. Compliance is that approach that we have traditionally used, and I'm generalizing for time's sake, but it's all over the world, really. Like, and it's like, how do we force people to fall in line, to follow rules, to ignore what their body needs in order to please other to please adults, essentially. And so there's this nice shift happening. I think we have a long way to go, but and it's not about people are, kind of get nervous. They're like, oh, I mean, if we have less compliance, then it's going to be like mass chaos and kids are just going to run around and they're never going to do anything. And it's not that at all. It's like, it's about empowering kids to understand their bodies so that they can do hard things, so that they can push through when something gets hard. They know how to persist. It's not just override your body, ignore what your body needs to just please me. Like, do it now, right? It's like, what does your body need to do this now? So it is the same end goal essentially, but it's just a different, kinder way of doing it. And I think there's so many adults in this world. We are products of compliance. We are all now struggling in our adulthood to get back in our bodies, to like set boundaries for ourselves, to like have better self-care. So I'm hoping that this less compliance, what do you call it? Campaign. I don't know what to call it, but we're all joining together. to hopefully make things better for the younger generation.
I think it's interesting what you said there toward it's all interesting, but what you said towards the end, like think of all of the people, and I'm sure I'm a lot older than yourself, but say older people like myself, or maybe younger people like yourself, but people that have grown up in a culture of the expectation was compliance. And think of people's mental health, think of people in terms of suicidality, think of people that are at risk because they think that's the only way they have to comply. They have to be the people pleaser. They can't say no. I think the work you're doing, you might call it a campaign, but I would call it like you're pushing the wheel of change forward. What you might have thought is this needs to happen. You've got all of these incredible people from all over the world involved in your campaign to, I suppose, as you referred to earlier, to make less compliance the way forward and to move away from you must or you have to. Is it possible for people like myself and for people who may be listening to this podcast that are non-speaking or might have an intellectual disability, is there a way for them to also be able, or for us as a parent, my role, to be able to help and support my child to understand their own interoception differences, but also how to support them to develop their own understanding of the self in terms of interoception?
Yeah, I think well, I know this is a very common question. And so first, I just want to answer it in a very basic way, but I am in no way, this is like a very complicated question to answer. So first and foremost, this is probably not something that you need to hear, but I like to say it just for, in case someone out there listening needs to hear. Non-speaking people have interoceptive fields. They have a lot of interoceptive fields. They have a lot of things happening in their body. Their bodies are feeling certain ways. And I think that a lot of autistic non-speaking people have unfortunately been subject to a lot of internal dismissal, people not believing their inner experience. And this is true for speaking people too, but I just think that the non-speaking community, they are just at high risk of having, and they could be from the most loving families, but we know there's no amount of. I hear this saying from my friend David Gray Hammond all the time. He's like, "There's no amount of bubble wrap we can put around our kids that protect them from the world outside of our homes," and it's so true. But the amount of people that dismiss or don't believe someone's inner experience. So maybe someone is like really struggling in a classroom. Let's just say maybe they're even developing self-injurious behavior. They're banging their head, or they're pinching their skin, or they are expressing something about the way their body is feeling in that scenario. Now, here comes the complicated part. It's really hard to figure out what's happening inside their bodies, right? Like, are they in pain? Do they have a headache? Right? Do they have a cavity? Do they have a bellyache? Is it too loud in here? So it becomes this important, incredibly important curiosity path for us to start to make hypotheses and test them out. And what I mean by that is if our hypothesis is maybe it is too loud in here, then what can we do to start to, dampen the noise? Maybe we start modeling noise canceling headphones ourselves and then gently offer it to them after they see people using them. How do we start to make hypotheses and test them? Or if we're thinking that perhaps it is pain, like, an unmet medical need, how do we, and I know healthcare systems are so different in the United States. Sometimes we need a lot of advocacy, and I love to wrap around my families and parents because they are tirelessly working systems that are tirelessly saying no to them. And so how do I, as a professional, support and wrap around them and help to advocate for better healthcare, more curious testing, et cetera? So I think it becomes this, we have to, first of all, acknowledge that everyone, including our non-speaking kids, have a lot of inner feels. And how do we move through a way that shows we believe them, that we're going to get curious and we're going to try to figure it out with them? And, I even talk out loud to my non-speaking clients all the time. Like, I see like you're pinching your skin. I wonder what's going on with your body. I want to try to figure this out together. I don't say all those things all at one time, but I talk out loud about the fact that I am trying to figure this out with you. I want to be here with you and be a co-regulator with you. So hopefully, I know I don't have a lot of time. I could talk about this for 17 hours. So hopefully that was a good enough synopsis.
But absolutely was. And actually, kind of that word individualized just came to my mind as you were talking. There is no one cut and dried, this is the way you do it. It's getting to know the person, following their cues, again, the language that I might use. So in our house, we would say ouch, because if I said the word sore obviously can mean like bed sore, it can mean a lot of different things. And because my boys and my daughter, they're all autistic, I would just use the most literal language. And if I'd heard them say the word ouch at one point, or if they typed in ouch into their, one of my sons uses a speech device full time, I would try and use the language that he's choosing to use so that it's meaningful to him as opposed to what's meaningful to me. So I think that that's a key piece that you've kind of highlighted there. I suppose, do you want to chat a little bit about, I suppose, what's next for yourself and the work that you're doing? I know you have a huge array of learning, I suppose, subject matter on your learning platform, but you also have brand new, are you wearing some of your new apparel or no? I saw some incredible new, ooh, very nice. Oh God, it's called Body Wisdom. What does it say? Body Wisdom
Body
Behavior
wisdom
System.
over behavior system.
Oh, love it. Yeah, so that even goes back into to what you're literally doing on social at the moment. So do you want to let our listeners know about anything that you have, I suppose, available for themselves that they might want to learn more about? In particular, your incredible books, mega fan here of them myself, your learning platform, and I suppose anything else, especially because you provide supports internationally. So that's the great thing about online. People here in Ireland, in anywhere else in Europe, or indeed the UK, they can access these supports, and obviously internationally as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly, I am a passionate lifelong learner, so there's constantly new things coming out on my website. I'm also extremely focused on making sure we have a lot of free resources that are accessible. And we are working on the accessibility part of making more and more digital resources. We have lots of digital resources on my website, but I will tell your listeners that the books that we're referring to, the new kids book series, is not yet digital. And that's just because we only started doing digital books. We just did our first one and we're testing the waters. I just want to make sure it's a high quality journey for everyone when they're purchasing these before we go. So yeah, we have our third book in the series coming out, and then that series will be done. That'll be all about how do I regulate my body signals. So it's about noticing body signals, connecting body signals to the meaning, and then regulating my body signals. And that really falls along with the pattern of the Interoception curriculum, where we have a three-part curriculum: notice, connect, regulate body signals. But yeah, like if you follow along on my blog or you join my email list, you'll get lots of free content. Maybe a little bit too much sometimes. I'm not sure. You can unsubscribe if you don't like it. But yeah, we really I feel so fortunate to be a part of a community that's constantly giving us feedback. They're constantly sharing stories about their interoceptive experiences. So it's just a continually evolving field. We're continually learning more. And, even when you were holding up my original green book, I was like, oh my God, when I wrote that, like we had such a different understanding. I wrote about interoception in a way different way. Like, I'm just going to be honest, like it's a lot of ableist language in that book. And we have just evolved so much in this space. And, and I really appreciate even being able to be on podcasts like yours to be able to, reach a greater community. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast with myself today. For any of our listeners or viewers of the video format of this podcast, I'll have all of Kelly's links below. Highly recommend the newsletter. Yes, there's lots of information, but if you're like myself, you want to have the best information available to you and the best resources. And again, as Kelly said, this is an older edition of the book. Have you a new version of this coming out? Because I'll be adding to cart immediately. Or is that much of an ask on you? Oh, no.
Okay. I need to get a second edition, but that book needs so much editing that every time I think about it, it gets really overwhelming. And then I'm like, I'll just read a kid's book instead. So, I would say that green book you're holding up, Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System, most of that content now is either like free on my blog or in my YouTube series. So that all that information is out there.
Oh my God, this is from 2017. I would have bought this around, so my youngest, or sorry, my eldest son would have been identified around 2015. So I was on like the learning journey because I have had this, you can see I'm a bit of a reader and a writer on books. I would have read this way back when. So I suppose it's like everything. Like I have books, oh my God, Uniquely Human. I remember when I read the first version of that, like to the second version, like language changes all the time, but the great knowledge and what your intent is in all the pages of this book. So whenever you get time, no pressure for myself, and I'm totally about less compliance, but if you would like to write this book or edition number two, I will have it very gladly on my shelf and very proudly too. So listen, thanks so much to Kelly and to all of our listeners. I hope you found this podcast really helpful. Definitely check the description part of this podcast for all of the information to find out more about Kelly and all of the incredible resources that she has available. So thank you.
Thank you.